Hello, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to today's Explearning Academy webinar. I'm very excited to be here with you all. I'm excited to share this material with you and for you to get started implementing this in your workplace interactions and in your social interactions that happen all day, every day. So we are going to start off our new theme for this month. And then we will also have a really fun new challenge in the community. We are currently wrapping up the nonverbal communication challenge in our community, and members are loving that. So that's still available, and you can check it out by going to academy.explearning.co and signing up for either of our paid plans, our two paid plans, which is the Explearning Academy plan and the Executive Communication plan. Group coaching plan. So our theme for this month is social confidence. So that will be in both workplace interactions as well as in casual social interactions. And again, it's the mix of both that we all have to do, and these types of scenarios that we encounter on our day-to-day when we're going out, when we're at work, when we're interacting with people, and so on and so forth. So we need to be able to know how to communicate in these types of scenarios with confidence, with poise, with understanding, and also do the active listening portion of that. So let's talk about what we are going to do today. Let me share my screen with you. And we will get started. Okay. Here we are. So as you can see, today's topic, in line with the theme of social confidence, is small talk. And we've certainly talked about small talk here in the Academy. I've spoken about it on my YouTube channels, Explearning with Mary Daphne and Advanced English for Professionals, and also my podcasts. So there's certainly, we've spoken about them, but we are going to take a little bit of a different angle, and we're also going to talk about it more in depth as well. So I highly recommend you check out those resources because, if you are somebody who really wants to improve their social confidence, to boost their social fluency, to communicate across various social situations and in different types of environments, not to mention different cultures as well, then small talk is a big part of that, right? You might have even done small talk today at some point, or are about to do it at some point. So you know how important it is to be able to do it in a way that is authentic, that is, interested, that is curious, that is all encompassing and, empathetic as well. So we're really talking about building connections and opening doors with easy, breezy, effortless communication. Don't we all want to be able to do that, right? Okay, so as far as what we're going to cover in today's webinar, the power of small talk, common misconceptions surrounding small talk. We're going to talk about situational openers, what they are, how to do them, finding common ground, why that's important, active listening. I'm going to teach you one of these small talk techniques as well. Compliments and sharing, transitioning to deeper topics, graceful exits, and some additional tips for you that you can start implementing right away. How does that sound? If it sounds good, give me a thumbs up in the chat for those of you joining us live. For those of you watching the replay, give a thumbs up, in the air, wherever you're watching this from. And you can always comment on the replay as well. All right. So with that, I want to also say that we, in addition to the resources I mentioned on small talk that we have, not only in the community, but also on the YouTube channels and in the podcast, on the podcast and in the Spotify. You can also download we have a downloadable about mastering the art of small talk. And I talk about a different framework in there that you're going to see different from the one that I'm sharing today. So again, if you're really keen on working on your small talk, then you can download that by just visiting our other website, which is explearning.co or advancedenglish.co. Okay. So that's a little bit of an extra resource for you. Again, there's a lot going on here. Okay, so for those of you who may or may not know me, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Mary Daphne. I am CEO and co-founder of explearning and Advanced English, and I am head of community here in explearning Academy. And, you know, I have a lot of passions and interests, but one of my professional passions and what I've been concentrating on for almost 2 decades now is really helping you, the modern executive and international professionals, helping you unlock the power of your communication, of your voice, of your ability to connect and communicate with others in a meaningful, authentic way, right? Where you are tapping into your confidence, you feel good in the interaction, you feel good about yourself, you're getting the jobs you want, you have the friend group you want, you are building the network you want, and life is good, right? Life is good. So whether you're looking to improve your social fluency, your confidence levels, mastering cross-cultural and intercultural communications, I'm here to guide you, okay? And my own personal professional journey includes nearly 2 decades in international corporate communications, television, live broadcasting, and education. And along the way, I earned degrees in French and communications, as well as 2 master's degrees from Bachelier University and Columbia University in New York City. I've taught communication, social skills, English, French, and social interaction for more than 16 years. And I always love focusing on how technology, research, and proven methods can deliver the best results for learners and students just like you. I was very honored and happy to have received the Fulbright grant, the Fulbright Award, and I've also trained teachers all around the world, as well as in New York City. So I always like bringing that into focus too, because that was the first professional capacity. That was my first foray into, going abroad and working with internationals, right? Training teachers, training corporate executives, training corporate employees in communication in a cross-cultural and intercultural capacity. And the things that I've learned along the way and from my time there and during that time, I also bring into our courses, our web courses, our challenges, our lessons, our executive coaching and feedback sessions, these webinars. So that was an important time as well for me because, again, bringing in that international focus is very important. As we know, I talk about how our globalized society, we really do need to understand how to communicate across cultures so that we can understand each other better, right? Have that empathy, have that active listening, be able to find common ground. We're going to talk about common ground today in our small talk session, and so on and so forth. So that's just a little bit about me. And you can always find me on LinkedIn and follow me there if you'd like as well. Okay, so let's now switch gears and talk about the power of small talk. Some of you might feel like small talk is a big, scary thing that you shudder just thinking of it, or maybe you've done it today and it's, one of those daunting experiences hanging over your head, like looming over you. And that's not a fun feeling to have. You don't want to associate that with small talk. Why? Because then when you're in situations that call for small talk, which are many, right, in our personal and professional lives, you don't want to have that, freeze moment, the deer in headlights moment, and not be able to engage in small talk, right? So we're going to talk about some of the reasons why small talk is so important. As you can see here, it is the first step, right, in forming meaningful relationships with people. So if you want to build rapport with people, if you want to connect with people, if you want to, engage with them on a professional level, on a personal level, and really, put your best foot forward in those interactions, you're going to do it starting through small talk. Okay. It also creates opportunities for networking, for career advancement, for, finding your dream job, for landing your dream client, for starting your dream company, for, being surrounded by people who really are pushing your industry forward, right? So also really important, not to mention the personal side of things too, having the friend group that you want, being friends with the people you want, right? Being able to connect with people on a different level, not just a superficial level, because that's not that interesting, right? Really diving deeper, having those important conversations and making those meaningful, ties with people. And then it also helps us feel more connected to one another, right? Because we're all connected. I truly believe that. And we can always find something to identify with in each other, finding common ground, even if you are from a totally different background or field or industry or culture or walk of life or whatever it is. We're human, right? So we can identify on a human level. And if we tap into that, and we have the communication strategies and skills that I share with you in the academy and in these resources like this, then you can do this. Then you are able to connect with people from wherever. So breaking down social barriers is another big one, another really big one. All right. So now that we know a little bit about why it is so important, maybe some of you hadn't thought about, this being as important as it actually is. But it is, right? And maybe some of you have realized how important small talk is, but just haven't really had the opportunity to practice it or to feel confident doing it or to know how to do it properly and confidently and, authentically and courageously even. So you might have come across some of these misconceptions like, oh, I don't care about small talk. Small talk is superficial. Well, it's actually not if you do it the right way. It might start that way if you, broach, very superficial like topics, but that's setting the ground even for rapport building, for creating some sort of common understanding of what you might be interested, what they might be interested. So for example, even if you start talking about the weather, but then all of a sudden you're talking about, the role of technology in our education system, then, it's no longer superficial, right? So it actually lays the groundwork for more in-depth, involved, deep dive conversations to take place. You might say, oh, I'm bad at small talk, right? So you just might have that fixed mindset and say, as opposed to a growth mindset, which we talk about too in the community, it's important to have a growth mindset. So if you have a fixed mindset and say that you're just bad at small talk and you'll never be good at it, and there's no point in practicing or learning how to do it and why it's important and how to apply it and trying these strategies on for size in your workplace and in your professional and personal lives, then, you'll never get better at it. But if you come from the perspective and you think about it as, okay, I might not be good at small talk yet, but with these strategies that I'm going to apply, with this, open mindset, this growth mindset about how my skills can develop as I work on them. I'm not saying just sit and, say, okay, universe, help me with my small talk skills. No, you put in the effort, right? You are proactive, right? That's how we learn any skill, including communication. Then you will get better. Practice makes progress. And eventually, the more you did, practice makes perfect, or a version of perfect, whatever that is, because that is a very elusive, nebulous concept of perfect, but you get the idea. The other common misconception could be, I need to be extroverted. I need to be outgoing. I need to be a Boolean. I need to be, bubbly and energetic to be good at small talk. That's actually not true. I personally have worked with many introverts, and I personally know many introverts who are excellent conversationalists, right? Where, they're really able to focus and hone in on their strengths, such as active listening, thoughtful question asking, right? So this is absolutely not true. You do not need to be an extrovert to be an amazing conversationalist and great at small talk and to strike up a conversation with anyone, even if you might be introverted, even if you might be on the shyer side. You can still really ace it at small talk and at, creating and being part of amazing conversations. Okay, so that should come as some solace to you, as some comfort to you, that these 3 misconceptions are just that. They're misconceptions. They are actually, we can't give them much credence because, as you see, we've debunked all 3. Okay, so on to my first kind of strategy that I want to share with you, which is what we call a situational opener. Okay, so what are things like this? What are situational openers? It's when you draw from the situation that you're in, that you find yourself, where you happen to be presented with an opportunity to make small talk with somebody. What does that mean? So you could be at a networking event. Draw from your environment. Draw from the situation. At networking events, there are presentations that tend to happen, right? So you might say to somebody, what did you think of the presentation? Get them to talk about it. Have them share their opinions, ideas, thoughts, insights about it, right? And then what do you do in return? You share yours. And you don't have to feel like you need to agree with them, right? Unless you actually do agree with them. Maybe they thought it was amazing. Maybe you thought it was just okay. Or maybe you thought it was the best presentation in the world, and so did they, right? You always want to be authentic, but it's always great to, also ask people their opinion too and see what they're thinking about it. So this is a situational opener at a networking event. What did you think of the presentation? At a social gathering, it could be a concert, a barbecue, a birthday party, anywhere where you are gathering socially with people, some of which you may know, some of which you may not know, right? We've all been there. We've been to friends' birthday parties and we know some people, but there could be a cluster of people that we don't know and that we haven't been introduced to yet. So you can either introduce yourself, or the host can introduce them to you, or, someone else can introduce them to you, or you, like I said, you just go up to somebody and you might drop this situational opener. Like the music selection is great, isn't it? Or what do you think of the hors d'oeuvres? I really like that cauliflower with the, lemon lime sauce or whatever. So again, what's the situation? What can you draw from in that environment that you're currently in, right? That immediately puts you on equal territory in terms of common ground, because you're listening to that music selection. They're listening to that music selection. Okay. So immediately you have some commonality right there. We're not even getting to the point where, oh, you might like that music, they might not like that music. That at that point, that part doesn't matter yet, right? Once you get to talk to them, you're like, oh, it's okay, but I prefer, jazz or whatever. And they might say, oh, yeah, jazz is great, but I prefer, country music or something like that. And then you could start talking and figuring out, putting out feelers. What are their interests? Are there any common points that you've figured out yet? And so on and so forth. But this is the other type of social situational opener. You also might be waiting in line for something, right? You might be at Trader Joe's waiting in line for your groceries. You might be waiting in line to place an order at your coffee shop. You might be standing, in line waiting for purchasing your movie tickets. So we find ourselves in line sometimes. So if you notice that somebody looks friendly or you just want to talk to them and they're kind of showing that they're interested in talking to you too, why not use a situational opener, right? So for example, maybe they have a bag of like edamame chips or something, and you've actually been meaning to try those edamame chips, and it looks like they're pretty familiar with that product. You might say, oh, I've been eyeing those edamame chips. Are they any good? Or, oh, is that smoothie mix any good? Have you tried it? What do you think of it? And then suddenly you get into a conversation, and that's pretty amazing. So suddenly something as at first as seemingly daunting as something like small talk, for a lot of people, it's very daunting, right? You have these situational openers that you can rely on and draw from. And of course, come up with your own based on the situation. But you'll never have a lack of something to say and how to start if you draw from your situation. Okay? So for people who think, oh, I don't know what to talk about, I have no topics on mind, I don't really know what to say. You do. All you have to do is think about your environment. What are you doing? Where are you? What's the location? What's the situation? And come up with a situational opener, just as I've outlined in these various social settings, right? Work, social life, public space. There you go. So easy peasy, easy peasy. Okay, we talked about common ground. Common ground is essential for building rapport, for connecting with somebody, for understanding who they are, and for them to understand who you are and start getting into a deeper conversation that goes beyond maybe surface level chatter and into some deeper talk, right? Small talk is not small. It's quite amazing because it leads to so much. It leads to so much discovery, right? It's groundbreaking. Okay, so in terms of common ground, I want you to think about two things. Okay, the first being focus. Okay, focus on the here, focus on the now, right? What event are you at? What are you doing? What's the purpose of gathering like this? Is it a birthday party? Is it a children's birthday party? Is it a soccer game? Is it a lacrosse game? Is it a barbecue? Is it a movie night opening? What is it? What location are you in? Okay. And so as soon as you walk into a venue, start paying attention, right? Don't just be on your phone or glued to the person that you came to this event with. Why? Why is that inadvisable? Why is that inadvisable? Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. You want to start paying attention to your surroundings, okay? We have 5 senses. Let's use them, okay? Let's not be glued to our phones. Let's not be consumed by something that's actually not important at that very moment, okay? So Shinto says it makes us not open to others. Absolutely, absolutely. It sends the signal. And I know, Shinto, you're doing the nonverbal communication challenge right now. That's amazing because as you know, with body language, if we're hunched over our phone or we're scotch taped to the person we came with, we're like so terrified to talk to anybody else but the person we came with. That's sending a signal to people that this person either is not interested in being here or talking to anybody else because they're on their phone or they're scotch tape glued to the next person, or they don't care enough. They don't even want to be here, or they're oblivious. That's another option. So we don't want to be any of those things. We want to be aware, using our senses. What does it smell like? What is it? If we're eating something or drinking something, what does it taste like? What are we hearing? Take in the stimulus, right? And then start switching your brain on, thinking, drawing, making connections, comparing it to some other event or some other situation that you found yourself in, right? Tap into those senses and those emotions. And that, my friends, will help you come up with your situational openers. Bingo, right there. You already have at least one thing to start a conversation with somebody about. How incredible is that? Adrienne says it makes us more anxious. What makes us more anxious, Adrienne? The fact that we might be closed off. I like where you're going with this. I just want to clarify though, because you're right. If we're not paying attention, if we're not allowing our senses to help us soak up the information that we are receiving from these sensory points, right? All the stimulus that there is around us, all the inputs that we are receiving, then we might be so, focused on either a message that we're reading on our phone, something that happened on social media, or just feeling anxious because we're actually not paying attention to what's really going on, right? Just we're kind of in our heads and making up a story and maybe catastrophizing, which is not necessary, right? Okay, so Adrienne says when we're not focused on what's happening around us, absolutely, absolutely. So again, focus on the situation and use your 5 senses, whatever is available to you, right? If there's no food, if you're not eating anything or drinking anything, of course, then you're not going to be activating your taste buds. But if you smell some delicious pepperoni pizza in a brick oven, firing up, you might remember, something about your favorite pizza place. And you might talk to somebody and say, oh, have you had the pizza at this pizza place? Because it really tastes like the one that we're about to have. It smells like the one we're about to have or something, right? There's no right or wrong with these. Just open your senses up, right? Put your antenna up and then draw those parallels, draw those connections, connect the dots. And that's how you get your situational openers. Okay, good. And then the second thing I want you to think about, ask. So ask open-ended questions. Close-ended questions immediately end the conversation. And if somebody is not if there is ineptitude in terms of not continuing the conversation or not knowing how to do small talk, then that person might just not know how to continue the conversation or even go to the next topic, simply because they themselves might have some social anxiety, or they might not know, how to segue into a related or different topic. But you can make it easy on people by asking open-ended questions. So how, why, these kinds of questions, as opposed to do, what, when, right? So how do you know the host? Instead of saying, do you know the host? Because do you know the host? They're just going to say yes or no. Somebody who is more confident and has experience talking to people and is a good, maybe even natural conversationalist and small talk doer, might say, yeah, we went to college together. We were both on the same hockey team. He used to throw parties like this all the time. And, his friend group would be known to host these epic theme parties that we would all love to go to, and so on and so forth. But most people, if they're asked, do you know the host? They're just going to say yes or no, right? But if you rephrase it and you instead say, Oh, so how do you know the host? Then they're going to be more inclined to say, oh, yeah, we went to college together. We were on the same hockey team. He was known to throw these epic theme parties that we would all pitch in with and help out with. And they were super fun. And everybody on campus would join. And it was a great time. It reminds me a lot of those college days, right? So that's kind of what we're getting at, right? Shinto, no, that's something different. It does not mean, are you a party crasher? But I like how you're trying to connect dots here. That's great. This is just, somebody is hosting a party. Could be a barbecue, could be, a Halloween party or their child's birthday party. And you just are trying to make small talk, right? So this is one of the ways to find common ground and draw from the situation, because the situation is there's this party. It's a lot of fun. Who's hosting it? Oh, how do you know the host? How do you know the host, right? It has nothing to do with whether, party crasher or not. But yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts there too. Okay, so focus and ask. Then, of course, we have active listening. Active listening is so important. We have a whole challenge about active listening. Simmons here, she joined that and she loved it, I know. And we have members who also have loved doing that challenge. It's still up. You can do it. I highly recommend it. Active listening is an integral part of effective communication. And of course, it's going to show up in small talk, right? So, active listening. You can show active listening by nodding, by making eye contact, by leaning in physically, by doing a triple nod, nodding 3 times in a row pretty quickly, by asking follow-up questions, things like that, right? Sparking curiosity, and just generally being curious, right? And again, with nonverbal communication, we can make this very apparent. We don't just have to, it doesn't have to just be that you're talking and asking questions. Of course, that verbal aspect is very important too. But a lot of active listening, you can actually show by your engagement, right? What's your body doing? What's your eye contact doing? Where are you looking? What's your gaze like? How relaxed or engaged is your body language? Are you 1 foot out the door? Are you leaning away? Are you leaning back? What's the foot positioning like? So many things. And we should be mindful of this, right? Because we want to be active, engaged listeners. So we want to make sure our body language also shows that. Okay. Follow-up questions. That's the verbal component. So asking those open-ended follow-up questions. So important, right? How are you going to demonstrate genuine interest, that you're actually interested in what they have to say? And if you're not interested in what they have to say, still hear them out and find something that you're both interested about, right? Or both interested in, and then you can use as a launching point. And if you find that you're not interested in what they have to say right then, that doesn't mean you might not be interested in something else. So you can actually, ask a question that you might be interested in. Like you've noticed that there is some common ground where, what maybe something they're doing in their industry, in their field, you're doing something similar in a different separate field. Maybe you're using a similar programming or software or technology or gadget, or you've been to the same, networking event, or you're part of the same professional development community like explearning Academy, right? Something like that, where you find something common to talk about. So always when you're, engaged, you want to show genuine interest. You never want to fake interest, because people see right through that. And that's just not a pleasant way to make conversation. And then you can also recap what you hear. So, oh, it sounds like you're interested in whatever, and talk about that and get them to talk about it. And then you talk about it and you say, I've never tried kite surfing, but I grew up sailing and I love being on the water. So it sounds like you and I both like water sports. That's pretty cool. right? So much to do here with that active listening component that is so very important. Okay, so what do we think about that? How important is active listening to you? Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. And maybe, have you noticed a difference in times where you did active listening and where you didn't do active listening? What was that? Was there a stark contrast? What was that like, right? Because again, if you're not doing active listening, then are you really communicating? Are you actually being an effective communicator? The answer is no, you're not. You're not. Okay, let's see. Simin says, so active listening shows your interest in ongoing communication. Yes, Simin, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, it helps you not just focus on what's being said right then and there, but it allows for future conversations like that. You're planting the seed for those future conversations to take place and for future meetups to happen, and on purpose, where you schedule them, right? Where you say, oh, we should meet up. I noticed that you also like, anime. Why don't we go see a Japanese anime together? There's a great festival coming up. Okay. Shinto says, by asking follow-up questions, we show our interest. For sure. 100% Shinto. So we really do need to be mindful of this, right? It's not just nodding and listening and then not saying anything and pretending to nod and then looking at your watch and then looking at your phone and kind of like looking out the window if there's a window. It's like you're engaged, your senses are activated, you're thinking about situational openers, follow-up questions. Where can you go with this? How are you curious? How can you show engagement? Find something genuinely to be interested about and in. And that comes from asking questions and being open to learning, open to having your mind changed. Again, that importance of the growth mindset comes back into swing. So incredible things happen when you're doing active listening. Okay, so for those of you in the community, we actually did a executive coaching session and feedback session on the Ford technique back in December. And we did it in both personal and professional settings, like fun social settings and workplace settings. So you may recall this, but I'm sharing it here now. And so you can think of the Ford technique as F for family. So you might say something like, do you have any siblings? Or does your family live in this area? Or is your family from this area? Or do you have any fun family traditions around Thanksgiving or, this time of year or around this type of celebration? Do you have any pets at home? Because yes, in American culture and in some other cultures too, we do consider our pets as family, for sure. Okay, so that's F from Ford. Then we have O, occupation. Okay, so maybe like, you meet somebody who is a geologist and you've never met a geologist before, but you think that's so cool. So what's a typical day like in your field? What's a typical day like for you at work? Okay, people, if they love what they do, which most people do, they want to talk about it. They want to share that with you. They love that you're interested. Okay. What do you most enjoy about your field, about your industry? How long have you been with your company? Are you a new hire? Have you been there for a long time? What's a typical day like for you? Okay. You might even ask them, are there any exciting, fun, new projects that you're working on? Okay. And then be prepared to answer those questions too if they ask you that question, right? So generally, like, it's good to ask questions that you yourself would be comfortable answering. You never want to pry too much, you never at all, really. You don't want to be, nosy, or there's a way to be curious and interested without being nosy, right? There's a big difference there. And so the next one would be recreation. So what do you like to do for fun? Do you have any interesting hobbies? Do you, what do you like to do in your free time? How do you spend your, weekend typically? Have you seen any good movies or any shows? Have you read any great books? I'm currently reading, this book. They might be reading the same book. Who knows? Have you tried any new restaurants in the area? I personally love sushi and ramen. Do you know of any good ramen and sushi places? Are you into sports, or do you have any active hobbies? Right? Why are questions like these important, do you think? Why are they important? And again, the Ford technique within the context of small talk. Again, I have another framework that I share with you in the downloadable that you can find on my website. So I recommend you check that one out too, because that's a separate framework that's also very useful and handy to have. It's great to have these frameworks and guidelines because they're just that, right? You can always fall back on them. You can always tweak them for them to suit, your situation or how you want to use them. Shinto says you mostly ask about occupation. That's great. Yeah, that's a great one to talk about, Shinto. I'm so glad that you found that, using that occupation launch point has been successful so far, or it seems to be working. That's great. So that's always a good one. It's usually a safe one. Same with recreation. And then let's look at the final one. So that's dreams and goals, right? So we've gone down the line, FORD, right? So with dreams and goals. Now with this, you might want to talk to them a few times before asking what their biggest dreams are, because that can be more personal. I mean, some people are very willing. They're a very open book, and they're able to just kind of talk about their most innermost thoughts and things, but not everyone's like that. So really kind of giving people space to let them answer how they feel and not pushing them and forcing them to talk about anything that they're not, right? That's always a general rule of thumb. So what are things like this? This is, any exciting plans for the future or for the upcoming long weekend? Do you have any fun, exciting travel plans coming up? Do you, if you had more free time, what would you like to learn or do? And then that might get them, starting to talk about this, rock climbing course that they are interested in taking, right? What else? Are there any professional goals that you're working towards? Maybe they have a big professional goal that they really want to start working on, but they haven't really found or made the time for yet. And if you could have any job in the world, what would it be, right? That's sort of getting at their dream job. And again, they might share that, they might not share that, and that's okay, but you're giving them the option to open up. And sometimes, if you open up first, that person is then much more likely to open up themselves, right? If they open up and then you do not open up, that would be a big red flag for the person, because it's like you're spilling your guts or they're spilling their guts and you're not. So that's not a good approach, right? We want to aim for that alignment there too. So think about that. Keep that in mind. And just some, important notes on this. I really want to remind you to be sensitive, right? Not everybody is comfortable discussing family, right? Or long-term goals. So that first one, the F in Ford, so family, and then the last one, D, dreams and goals. Those might be topics that are more reserved for when you get to know the person a little bit better, right? So it's not like, oh, you meet somebody at this networking event and suddenly you're talking about, their family and their dreams and goals. They might. I've certainly met people where the conversation goes that way and, now we're best friends. But it's not necessarily the case. So Again, you feel it out. You put out feelers. You read the room. You pay attention. You use your nonverbal cues. You understand their nonverbal cues. Do the nonverbal communication challenge, everybody. You use active listening. You ask the right questions. All of this. It's all combined, right? All combined. So what you would do here in this situation is you start with lighter topics, okay? Right? Maybe talk about the situation you're in. Then see where they talk about, do they talk about their job? Do they talk about their recreational, endeavors? What do they talk about? So keep it light. And then gauge their comfort level, right? How comfortable is this person? Are they an open book, or are they a tough nut to crack, right? And then you can maybe start, maybe not in that meeting, but maybe in a future meeting, you meet them later at another time. Maybe then you can broach those more potentially personal areas like family and dreams and goals, but not usually right off the bat, right? Usually we have many opportunities to make small talk. And if it goes right, it's going to be with the same person that way, because you don't get to know a person just by one interaction with them. Absolutely not, right? It takes several interactions where you're both being authentic. You're both doing active listening. You're paying attention to each other. You're asking the right questions. You're showing interest. You're tapping into those follow-up questions, clarifying questions, open-ended questions, all that jazz. The other thing I want you to keep in mind with this technique is tailor it to the situation. This is true of all of the communication techniques and tools that we share and that we do and that we practice. And part of the reason we have the executive small group coaching is so that you can practice these strategies in simulations, in role plays with each other, with me, with our group, and then get feedback, real-time feedback, and also follow-up feedback that you can look at, and then have follow-up activities as well that I give you. So in other words, we don't really have like a perfect formula for every type of communication. We have strategies. We have not everything is plug and play. We're not like a computer software where we say, we are at a barbecue. I'm talking to somebody who is interested in flying or fishing. How do I talk to them? What do I say? It's going to be different. You might meet somebody else who's interested in fishing or flying. I can't remember what I said. Flying and then fishing, I said. And you might be at a barbecue, but the conversation can go in an entirely different direction. They're a different person. You're a different person at that moment. You've learned things. You've evolved. We're dynamic creatures. We're social creatures. So that's why there's not just like one strategy that's the be all end all of strategies. It's about taking in all these strategies, tweaking them, applying them to different situations, exposing ourselves to as many types of situations as we can. And the amazing thing is that we do that in our group coaching sessions, where we're exposing you to all different types of simulations and scenarios and different people, because we have different people coming into the community all the time. So it's kind of amazing. And you get to practice these strategies, not just these strategies, but several strategies, depending on what we have for that day. And then, of course, you get the feedback, because in real life, you're not going to get the feedback, right? You might not know why that person decided to walk away from you, or said that they had to go. Was it really that they had to go, or did they just not want to talk to you? Why is that? Was there something you were doing that was not as effective as it could be? And that's the other thing. You get to see how you're interacting, because in real life settings, right, we don't actually see how we're interacting. It's not like we have a camera on us all the time and that we analyze the footage. I mean, if you do that, that's pretty cool. I think it's awesome, provided that you're being respectful of other people around you. But you know what I mean, right? So we record the replays, and they're for members only. So with the feedback, the real-time feedback that you get in our sessions, the real-time social interaction that you get with me and the other members in our executive coaching sessions, plus the feedback that you get after the coaching session, plus having the replay where you get to see what you're doing and how you interacted, and you didn't realize that maybe you could have done a different type of expression, like a nonverbal expression, or you thought you did that expression, but you really didn't, or you thought you said something, but you didn't, or vice versa. And then you also get those follow-up activities. So practice, 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 practice is so important. I cannot stress that enough, because that's really how you're going to see progress, feel progress, how others are going to see that in you. And that's how you're going to get better at communication in any type of setting. We do it all. We do the workplace settings, we do the casual social settings, because we do all of them, right? In real life, that's just how it is. So something to consider. Now, in terms of compliments and sharing, so this is something that I want you to be mindful of as well. You want to steer clear of the generic, disingenuous kind of like, let's call them fake compliments, right? You may have had a time where you've given someone a compliment like, oh, I love your haircut, but you actually don't love their haircut, but you see that they're a little down and you want to make them feel better. Maybe that's not the best way to approach it by lying like that, but maybe that's happened to you, right? Instead, if you actually like somebody's earrings, you can say, I love your earrings. They're very unique. What an interesting design. They remind me of this, motif that I saw at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And then maybe you have a little conversation about that. And maybe you talk about design and symmetry and patterns and whatever, or fashion or mathematics. I don't know, something, right? You can tie it to anything, really, if you're curious and if you're connecting dots. The other thing is you don't want to overshare. Okay, we're going to talk about this a little bit in the next slide too. But you want to, again, my friends, this is small talk, right? So you don't necessarily know the person all that well yet. Okay, it's going to take a few rounds of small talk for them to then kind of be more from an acquaintance to an actual friend or maybe a colleague, right? So with oversharing, it's better not to go in that direction. You don't know them yet. They don't know you yet. It's very easy to judge people. It's very easy to misinterpret something. So just give some small, relatable detail about yourself, just for the purpose of building rapport, for establishing that initial connection. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a second, though. And then also, try to avoid generic compliments, right? You don't want these generic things coming out of your mouth. So I love the color of your dress. It really suits you. It really brings out the color in your eyes. Or that scarf is such an amazing pattern. It reminds me of one that I used to have, and I really loved it. And I think it looks great on you. Okay. Try to avoid complimenting people on, things that they can't really change. And more so about, things that, maybe something that they're wearing or something that they said or something that they did, as opposed to, wow, I love the shape of your nose, right? That's a little weird. Right? And also they can't really change that. I mean, they could with, I guess, surgery or whatnot, but as opposed to, their earrings, they can change that, right? So make it not as personal, in other words. It also might be a little bit inappropriate depending on what setting you're in. So steer clear of that. I know in some cultures it's appropriate to comment on people's looks and maybe their weight and maybe their, whatever muscles, or I don't know. But it's better, especially if you don't know the person and you're meeting them just for the first few times. This is small talk. Err on the side of caution there. Okay. Okay, good. Good. Okay, now I want to bring your attention to this point that I made here. Let's talk a little bit about oversharing versus rapport building. Okay, so for example, let's say somebody says to you, honestly, my job is terrible. My boss is a nightmare. I'm so underpaid. I've been looking for a new job for months now and nothing seems to work, right? They just like pour this out. They like throw up this whole thing on you. not the greatest sign, right? Not the greatest thing there. As opposed to, oh, okay, what do you do? Right? So let's imagine the question. These both have the same question, but they're answered differently. Okay. So from the oversharing perspective, that's that first one. But if you're building rapport and you're thinking carefully about how you're, being more deliberate about your thinking, you're thinking before you speak, very important. You say, oh, I'm in marketing and things have been really busy lately. It's always a bit of a whirlwind around project deadlines. Okay. That person might say this, but they might be feeling this other on the other side here, the left side, but they're not going to overshare. They're not going to overshare because what does that do? That sends negative signals. It's like dumping personal problems, kind of like word throw up on somebody that you barely know, right? You barely know this person. You've only met them a handful of times. You're still in the learning phase, the small talk phase. And it goes, it can go differently with different people. In other words, you might get really close to somebody with just a few small talk encounters, or it might take a year of small talk before you actually start opening up to each other. So again, you're not going to want to do this oversharing, especially in this way. It could be very negative, very antagonistic. It's not very kind to the person listening to you because then they feel this big burden, like, oh, what do I do with this information? Do I help this person? Do I give them advice? Or maybe the boss that they have. Maybe, you're the spouse of the boss, or maybe you're the cousin of the boss or the sister of the boss or whatever. So again, you want to be careful, right? Whereas if you do this building rapport, oh, I'm in marketing. Things have been really busy lately, right? You're not really getting into the details. You're not lying. You're being authentic. It's always a bit of a whirlwind around project deadlines, but you're not being negative. Okay. So this is a much better way to answer this, right? This is relatable for so many people. A lot of people are really busy, especially around deadlines, right? When you have a lot due. So it acknowledges that work can be a little bit crazy, a little bit hectic at times, but it's not overly personal or complaining. We all know people who complain a lot, right? Or complain a little, but it feels like they complain a lot. We know people like that. How fun is it to hang out with them? Probably not that fun, right? Now, everybody complains every so often, but it's a matter of, how much are they complaining? Every time do they see you? Do they talk about a new problem? Are they always dumping their problems on you in hopes that you can find a solution, right? So it's not the kind of tone that we want to set for building relationships, be them work relationships or personal relationships. Okay, so please keep that in mind and err on the side of caution with that too. Okay. Oh, one more thing I'll say about this slide here. When you think about oversharing typically, not always, but typically comes from a place of negativity, right? It might be sharing, it could be coming from a place of negativity, not always, but it could be, or at least kind of like making the other person like not really sure what to do with the information. So they might be a little bit uncomfortable, and that's not fair to them, right? You barely know this person. Why are you dumping your problems on them? Like they can't come up with the solution any better than you can. So that's not the person to talk to about this because you don't know them. They don't know you. It also might be like highly personal information that you really, shouldn't be giving this person. They don't know you, again, that you don't know them. Can you even trust this person? You don't know. So, or it could be venting, right? You just complain. You want to vent. You want to share this information. Venting is fine, but with the people who actually know you, love you, care about you, that they do, that you have that synchrony with, where they vent to you, you vent to them. And again, about how much time do you spend of your relationship venting? So that balance there. But the goal really with this is to find common ground. Okay, so talk about work for sure. Talk about, how you both have busy deadlines, busy project timelines, and, it might not be the best time to meet up for a coffee, but next month you're freer or whatever. So like find that common ground, talk about work, talk about these things without making the other person feel uncomfortable. Okay, because oversharing will undoubtedly make the other person feel uncomfortable. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. That's one of the quickest ways for them to never want to speak to you again. Because they'll see that as a red flag. They'll be like, okay, this person needs to figure out their situation, have that emotional regulation, learn how to communicate because they're a handful. Cannot deal with this right now. Okay, deeper topics. Very good. So once we do small talk right, we want to be able to graduate from small talk to deeper topics. Okay, so that's always the goal with small talk. And again, that can happen in that first session that you meet somebody. It really will depend on rapport, how well you can connect with the person naturally, whether you've met them already before, maybe several years ago or at another event, or you keep bumping into them, or you have so much common ground that, just like conversation after conversation, topic after topic, and you're both kind of like very keen on becoming friends. That can happen. Or like I said, it might take several times, right? We might meet this person and just be in the same proximity to them like 2 years, 1 year, and you still don't really know them and they don't really know you. And you just haven't really been able to crack that surface and get beyond those, into those deeper topics. So it really just depends. And you won't know without trying. You won't know without trying. Okay. So for example, how do you transition to something from like a more small talk into you segue into something deeper? Well, if they elaborate on a point, right? So if they start to open up about something or explain something or, go into more depth about something, it signals a potential, not just, immediate, but a potential. There's a possibility for more meaningful discussion. So for example, if you ask them a topic, you ask them about, a camping trip, and they start talking about something, and then you ask them about their gear and, what kind of like tent do you have and how do you set it up and and they start talking about that, then you might notice, okay, this person is like really good about, maybe doing research on the type of gear for these kinds of outdoor activities. Maybe they're an experienced and seasoned camper. Maybe they know a lot about, like building and creating things. So you can then start to understand that this person might be somebody where you're going to have more meaningful conversations with, which is really cool. You can phrase something as an invitation, right? So this goes back to the active listening point. And this is something that Simin mentioned, who, by the way, successfully completed our active listening challenge. Way to go, Simin. So with that, you're drawing from either a previous conversation, which is going to absolutely blow their mind that you remembered what you talked about and that you were actively listening, right? That's going to give you lots of brownie points. So good job. Or it could have been earlier in the conversation or earlier in the event where you say, oh, you mentioned photography is a passion of yours. Would you mind sharing some tips? I actually, I'm going to borrow my sister's camera this weekend to take some nature photos. I would love to know, like, what you think, what settings I should have the camera on or whatever, right? So you phrase it as an invitation for them to then open up and start talking about this passion of theirs, which happens to be photography. Okay. So you're giving them an opportunity to share. Very nice. Okay. Now the conversation is ended. You're both going your separate ways. How do you gracefully exit a conversation? Well, here are some ways. And again, this is in the small talk context. There we go. I said it. And we can do so much more on this. So if that's of interest, I'm happy to spend some time at a future webinar about gracefully exiting conversations, we can certainly do that. But in this context, you might say, it was so nice meeting you. I'm going to go grab another bite to eat. So you have that excuse. You're going to go, and maybe you are going to do that. You're not lying. No need to do that. Or I'm going to go refill my water glass, or I'm going to go grab another cup of coffee. Great meeting you, right? So you finish that conversation. You show them you have other things to do, and that's okay. And they pick up on that cue. For people who might not pick up on that cue, they might say, oh, I'll join you. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee too. That might be okay, like in terms of you have other things to talk about, but maybe you really did want to exit that conversation. So they come up to the stand with you, you grab your bite or cup of coffee, they grab theirs, and then you say, oh, thank you so much. Love chatting. I'll see you next week, or can't wait to see you at another one of these, or I'm sure I'll run into you at another one of these, and then you can exit if they don't get the signal, right? Because again, not everyone is a great, amazing, terrific, effective communicator. Okay. The other thing is like, so you've wrapped up. I want to let you mingle with other people. So go enjoy the rest of your evening, or I'll let you go. I'm sure you have a lot of people, a lot of hands to shake, a lot of business cards to collect, whatever, right? You tailor it to however you would like. You try it on for size, try it out. Come join us in our community, get feedback on it, and then use it, right? So those are two things that you can absolutely start using right away. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. We're talking about small talk. Obviously, let's keep the questions focused on that so that we don't veer off topic, but I'm happy to answer any questions about whatever we talked about today in this webinar, small talk, and about Explearning Academy, our community, our professional development platform for the modern executive. So feel free to ask now in the chat before we wrap up. And then I'm going to share some additional tips for you to take with you, little golden nuggets. Good question, Shinto. Is there a minimum or maximum time for small talk? The short answer is no. It's really about putting all your senses up, seeing how, like, you being receptive to their body language. Everyone has a different kind of social stamina and social battery, right? Think about somebody doing exercise. Somebody who does a lot of exercise, and again, there's so many different types of exercise. So let's even go a step further and, draw from an example where, let's be specific. So for example, if you are somebody who is a cyclist and you cycle every day, you get on your bike, your road bike or your stationary bike, and you do that every day, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, their capacity to bike for as long as they do, as frequently as they do, is going to be much greater, much stronger, as opposed than somebody who bikes every once in a while, right? And they might not go at that same intensity, right? One person might be doing zone 1 biking, the other person might be doing zone 2 biking, other people might be doing HIIT and interval training, road biking. So there's so much variety. We all have different social batteries, right? So some of us are extroverted, some of us are introverted, some of us are ambivert, so in between, and we have different stamina. So for example, let's say you have a strong social battery and also lots of stamina to have a conversation, to do small talk. That might be a 10-minute conversation, whereas the other person might only have capacity for like a 2-minute, 3-minute, 5-minute conversation because they don't have the same stamina as you. They don't have as big of a social battery or powerful as a social battery. Maybe they're shy, they're introverted, they're, not really accustomed to it. That can, of course, change with practice, right? And mindset. So that's my answer for you. It will depend. It will depend. And the way you know is by putting out feelers. So you get them to talk. You get them to talk about something interesting. You show that you're interested. You do active listening. All of that increases the chances of them actually staying in that conversation. But you can't expect everyone to have the same stamina and endurance and social battery as you, right? There might be an introvert who is talking to an extrovert, but because of the way the extrovert is engaging with them, they start exhibiting symptoms and signs of an extrovert as well. And then the conversation ends up being 1 hour long, and suddenly the networking event is over. So there's no minimum or maximum time for small talk. It's not about quantity, okay? It's about quality. Quality over quantity. So are you asking the right questions? Are you being really interested? Are you giving them enough time to talk, or are you just doing all the talking? Are you doing active listening? Have you made them smile? Have you made them laugh? Are they opening up? Are you opening up? Are you, showing signs of rapport building? So many things here. Yeah, exiting gracefully, it's a good question. We'll definitely talk more about this. And if you join us for the group coaching session tomorrow, we will be working on this as well. Again, that's about feeling it out, right? You also have to think about what's your goal in that situation. If your goal is in that situation networking, then even if you're having an amazing time with this person and you could talk to them for 2 hours, you need to be mindful of the other people in the room as well, and that you want to meet as many people as you do for business reasons, right? For networking. That's the point of an event. So if you have a great talk with this person and you really want to stay with them for another 2 hours talking, but you want to mingle and socialize even more, then make sure that you set up a follow-up with the person that you really get along with, because you've accomplished that goal already. You've met somebody that you're really interested in. They're really interested in you. You maybe can do business together. You maybe can be work buddies or whatever. So think about 2 things. Is this conversation going anywhere? What's my goal with this event? And the third thing you can think about is like, is this a good time is there a lull in the conversation? Have I exhausted the topics for me to now move on to another topic, to another person, to another location even? So you have to feel for that too. Like I said, there's no answer to just the situation, because the situation is going to be different each time. Each time the situation will be different. Even if the speech act is the same, like, meeting someone, networking, or the social situation, it's going to be different all the time. There are different people there. You're in a different mindset. You've had a different day. You have different goals. You know more now, right? So that hopefully answers your question. All right. That's kind of the beauty of live social interaction, like doing communication, because it's always really the key to communication is having these strategies, practicing them, getting feedback, and then being flexible in your approach. Because we're always tweaking things. We're always receiving feedback from the person. We're putting out, our own imprint, and they're getting feedback from us, what we're doing. Think about it. Like, you might have talked to the same exact person you did today and you did yesterday. Were the 2 conversations identical? No. Were your 2 kind of mindsets identical in those 2 conversations? No. Did you talk about the same things? No. Right? Did you, have the same kind of emotion behind it? No. So that drives home the point that I'm making. But that is one of my favorite things about communication, that it's so malleable and it changes all the time, and that, we show up differently and they show up differently. And it's really about like a performance in the moment. Even if an actor, an acting troupe performs a play, the same lines, the same costume, it will be different every single time. every single time. The audience is different. The moods of the actors are different. The situation in the world might be different. So every single performance is different. Beautiful. Okay, so let's do some final additional tips for you. The first one is body language, right? We really, really, really want to be mindful of this. And I highly encourage you to take our nonverbal communication challenge. It's a really great one, and it's very useful. So open posture, genuine smiles, being aware of, your micro expressions, your eye contact, your gaze, your gestures, your positioning, your proximity, all these things that they don't teach you in school. So please remember your body language and how to read body language. That's another thing that we talk about in the challenge. Humor, right? Use it judiciously. So test the waters first, put out feelers, read the room, read the situation, and then decide, is humor a good thing to do? Avoid sarcasm. Yeah. Okay. Because you don't know the person well enough yet. And it's just a better kind of tone that you're setting, because you're trying to be authentic. And also, if there's some cross-cultural signals there, not every culture treats sarcasm the same way. Sometimes it's not even in that culture. So you have to really consider humor as something that you will do when you get to know the person a little bit better. So that's what I'll say about that. And in terms of awkwardness, you know what? I will say something else about humor. The reason we kind of want to be judicious about this is because humor is subjective. Okay. Meaning what somebody might find very funny or hilarious might fall flat. They might not even register that. They might not even see that that's a joke, or they might take it seriously, be offended, and that will be a bigger problem, right? So know your audience, right? The rule of thumb with humor is know your audience. I mean, with communication in general, who are you talking to? We have our Delheim's Masterclass web course in Explearning Academy, and we go through all those different modules there, and you learn about the kind of framework for mastering communication across different settings. It's a great web course. I highly recommend you take it. It's fantastic. And there's a portion in there about your audience, right? The participants. Who are you talking to? So Shinto, definitely check that one out, because some of your questions about like exiting and small talk and the time, I think a lot of that will be answered in there too. But I feel like I also shared that here as well. So just use both. I think you'll enjoy that. A little side note. Awesome, Shinto. The other thing is self-deprecating humor can work. That's when you kind of poke fun at yourself. You make fun of yourself in a lighthearted, jovial, kind of fun way. That's safer than targeting somebody else. So if you say, no, MD, I'm somebody who has humor, and I definitely want to bring that into my small talk. Look, go ahead. Just be mindful, okay? Know your audience, and then err on the side of self-deprecating humor as opposed to poking fun at somebody else, okay? And if you're in doubt, just err on the side of less humor, okay? There's so much more. There's so much you can do. You don't necessarily have to add humor every single time. People are not going to like you more or less for it necessarily. So you can always add it later if it feels natural to you, but it's always harder to backtrack, to apologize for a joke that just completely, blows up in someone's face. So better to avoid it. And if you're going to use it with caution, use it judiciously, test the waters first. The next thing I'll say about awkwardness is that, just acknowledge it. It happens. Everybody has awkward moments. Even like the top Hollywood stars and A-listers have, these cringe moments. That's okay. It's part of being human. Just acknowledge it and then move on, right? Awkwardness happens to everybody. It's not anything to, hide or pretend like it didn't happen. Can actually make it worse because it exposes like insecurities. So you don't want to do that. So instead, just like a quick acknowledgement about it can just immediately diffuse tension and everyone forgets about it. If you don't address it, then people are going to be focused on that the whole interaction with you. So you might say, well, that was awkward. And then you smile and then you change the subject, right? That just takes the pressure off. And then also don't dwell on it, right? Don't just like be like, oh, I messed up that social interaction. I can't believe that was such a silly thing I said or did, or maybe you fell and you feel like you were, that was embarrassing for you. Just don't dwell on it, right? Because meaning like don't ruminate over it. Don't have that consume all your energy, because the more you focus on that awkward moment, the more uncomfortable it will become. And then also more you're kind of like, we have an expression in English, like making a mountain out of a molehill, right? Making it bigger than it was actually. So you fell. So what? So you slipped up, whatever. It doesn't matter really in the grand scheme of things. And then have a new topic ready. So this will help you transition and segue, to another topic. So you do a topic shift and then you can easily flow into that topic, and it puts the awkwardness in the past because now everyone's thinking about what you're saying now. Okay. So that's that. I know that was a lot, but you have the replay. So certainly go back and watch that. It's there for you. You can watch it as many times as you'd like. And you also have the PowerPoint in the community as well. I will publish that along with the replay. So our part 2 of this is our live executive coaching and feedback session. So if you want an opportunity to network, to make friends, to meet people, to talk to people, to get their feedback, to practice the strategies, to try out, the scenarios and the, what am I looking for? What word am I looking for? The techniques and strategies. There we go. This is what happens when you talk nonstop for over an hour. This is a great place to do it, right? It's low stakes, low risk. You get to practice because these are real life scenarios that I give you, real life situations that we really do, real strategies, really implementable, very relevant to everybody. So you walk away with lots of amazing gems. And then of course you get the real-time feedback, you get the real-time practice, and then you get the post workshop feedback that you get to keep and look at, and you get your replay, and you get the follow-up activities. So this is fantastic to do. To do this, you need to be part of the explearning Academy group coaching plan. So if you just go to our website, academy.explearning.co, you'll notice that there are 2 paid plans. The executive coaching session is the one to do. Okay. So that's the one to do. And I really encourage you to do that. Okay. So if you want to make new friends, if you want to build your network, join the community. It's a great place to be. We learn so much. We do so much. We have a great time. And I really hope to see you there. You can read our member testimonials, meaning the things that the members have to say, all the wonderful things they have to say. You'll hear it from them. It's all there. You'll learn about our plans, find which one is the right one for you, because we all have different goals, right? And then, find out what makes us different as well. I mean, I think it's kind of, you might already feel like that by coming to our webinars and participating in these kinds of events, but you can also learn about that there and just go to our website to check out more information. So you can find that at academy.explearning.co, and I can't wait to welcome you to our community. And for those of you already in our community, I can't wait to see you in the on the platform and in our group coaching session as well. So these are from, our calls, and we have a great time, great group of people. It's just a wonderful, wonderful time spent. And that's that. And this is one of our members who said, best investment, you won't regret it. So I thought that was, it encapsulates what we do in the Academy. It's an investment, right? You're investing in yourself. You're investing in your future. What better thing to invest in? And it's really about growing, professional development, personal growth, and showing up and doing it each time better and better and better. So thank you all for joining me. I will see you very soon. Take care and be well. Bye.